rejected, alone, and misunderstood. Peter never expected Christmas to bring heartbreak, until two tiny hands signed the words that would change his life forever. White heavy check mark. Hello beautiful souls, and welcome to Ms. Love Stories channel, the place where love, drama, and unforgettable moments come alive. I'm so thrilled you're here, ready to dive into stories that will make your heart race, bring tears, and leave you believing in the power of love. Before we begin, I want to get to know all of you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because in the next video, I'll give a special shout out to some of you amazing viewers from around the world. I can't wait to see how far our love story family reaches. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single emotional journey. Get ready to feel, laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again, because every story we share here is for you. Now, the story begins. Rose. The snow fell gently over the city, glittering like crushed diamonds across the dark streets. Inside the opulent penthouse atop one of the tallest towers, Peter adjusted the cuff of his designer suit for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The ballroom was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and festive music that made most people feel warm and alive. Yet Peter felt none of it. The billionaire had been counting the hours, the minutes, even the seconds, until his Christmas blind date arrived. He had agreed to this meeting out of curiosity, and perhaps a quiet longing that had grown in him over years of isolation. Though wealthy, powerful, and admired, Peter often felt invisible in ways money could never fix. His deafness created walls he couldn't always explain. And tonight, it seemed, those walls were taller than ever. Across the room, he noticed the clock inching closer to the arranged time. His hand tapped against the polished edge of the table, not out of impatience, but an almost subconscious rhythm that mirrored the anxiety in his chest. When she arrived, well, when she should have. Peter's pulse quickened in anticipation. But the door opened, and the moment wasn't what he had imagined. She was lovely, kind enough, but distracted, disengaged. Words of pleasantry floated into his mind as he read lips, but her eyes told a different story. She wasn't here for him. Within minutes, he understood she was going to reject him. Not harshly, not cruelly, but with the polite detachment of someone who couldn't summon the care he had hoped for. Peter felt the familiar hollow echo in his chest, the kind that only comes when you are reminded of your solitude. He had faced rejection before, every deal, every handshake, every attempt at a connection, but this was different. Personal. Immediate. Painful. He rose from his chair, excusing himself with a polite nod, leaving the glass of untouched champagne behind. Meanwhile, across the city in a smaller, warmly lit apartment, Joy was preparing for the same night, though for her, there was no penthouse, no grand ballroom, only the quiet hum of her heater and the anxious laughter of her twin daughters. The girls, each no older than 7, were bustling around, tugging at their mother's hands, their excitement palpable. They loved Christmas, loved its lights, its smells, the magic in every corner. But tonight, their mother's heart felt heavy. Joy had signed up for a blind date on a whim, a small hope in her otherwise unpredictable life as a single mother. Her ex-husband had walked away, leaving her juggling bills, bedtime stories, and the kind of loneliness that felt suffocating in its persistence. She had told herself she wouldn't expect much. A pleasant evening, maybe a conversation, a few laughs. Anything more seemed impossible. As she checked her reflection in the mirror, smoothing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her mind wandered. What if she embarrassed herself? What if this man didn't like her? Or worse, what if she liked him, and he didn't feel the same? The weight of these questions pressed on her chest, yet she smiled for her girls, putting on the kind of courage she had perfected over years of pretending everything was okay. Back at the penthouse, Peter wandered to the balcony, staring out at the city's shimmering skyline. He let the cold air brush against his face, each breath crystallizing in the night. His mind replayed the rejection, the subtle dismissive gestures, the hollow pleased to meet you, that didn't touch his soul. He almost didn't notice the soft sound at the door, a hesitant knock, almost childlike. 2 little faces peeked in. Twin girls bundled in scarves and mittens, eyes wide with curiosity and innocence. Peter's first instinct was surprise. He had expected empty rejection, maybe solitude, but not this. One of the girls stepped forward, hands raised slightly, signing something he recognized immediately. "Can we join you?" Peter's heart stuttered. The sudden shift of focus, the purity of a child's intent, pierced through the hollow ache he had carried all evening. For a moment, the penthouse, the city, even the loneliness, all melted away. The girls smiled, their expressions warm and unjudging. And Peter, who had thought he would end the night in quiet disappointment, felt something unexpected, a spark of connection. It wasn't the romance he had imagined, not yet. But it was something real, something tender, something that hinted at the possibility of love, and maybe, the beginning of hope. And somewhere deep inside, Peter realized that this Christmas night might not end in rejection after all, but in the quiet unfolding of something life-changing. Have you ever felt overlooked or misunderstood? Comment below how someone's small act of kindness changed your day. The soft jingle of Christmas bells drifted through the penthouse as Peter knelt down to meet the girls' eyes. The twins, identical except for the tiniest scar on one's cheek, tilted their heads, their breath visible in the cold night air, and repeated the sign again, more insistently. "Can we join you?" Peter's fingers hesitated in the air. In his life, people often misunderstood him, his deafness, his silence, the way he navigated the world differently, but these two small beings seemed fearless. Their hands moved with the simplicity of children who trusted the world, who believed in human kindness before judgment. I don't know." Peter signed slowly, unsure how to respond. Words had always been complicated. Signs felt immediate, emotional, almost sacred. He looked at their expectant faces, and something inside him softened. A part he rarely allowed to breathe. From the doorway, Joy stepped forward, watching cautiously. Her daughters had always been bold, but now she felt the fragile thrill of hope brushing against her chest. This man, so imposing, yet clearly unguarded for the first time in the evening, was reaching out, not with judgment, but with curiosity. The girls giggled softly, sensing the hesitation, and one whispered a tiny secret to her sister. "He looks lonely." The words weren't signed, but Peter caught the sentiment in the gentle tilt of her head, the way her eyes shimmered. Loneliness. A word he knew too well. He exhaled, long and measured, the cold air escaping in small clouds. Then he motioned toward the sofa. "Come," he signed. "Sit." Joy's heart skipped. She had expected polite refusal, maybe awkwardness. Instead, he invited them in. Carefully, the girls removed their scarves and mittens, and the apartment, once a silent echo of rejection, buzzed with warmth and life. Peter observed them as they settled. One daughter rested her head on Joy's lap, looking up at Peter with wide, curious eyes. The other fidgeted with a small bell from her coat. Every tiny movement told a story. Curiosity, courage, and trust. Peter found himself smiling without realizing it, a rare, unguarded expression. Joy sat opposite him, hands folded, studying his face. She noticed the subtle tension in his jaw, the way his fingers flexed as he tried to find the right signs, the faint shadow of vulnerability behind his eyes. She had been cautious before, wary of blind dates that promised connection, but delivered disappointment. But this man, he felt different. Real. Honest. The twins, sensing the delicate atmosphere, decided to break the ice in their own way. They began showing Peter their small Christmas drawings, crumpled slightly at the edges, with stickers and bright colors. "Look," one signed enthusiastically. "Santa." Peter leaned closer, genuinely interested. "Beautiful," he signed, careful to mirror their excitement. His fingers trembled slightly, not from cold, but from emotion. The girl's joy was contagious, washing over the heavy loneliness he had carried for years. Joy's lips curled into a small smile, seeing the walls around Peter begin to crumble. There was something about the way he focused on the children, completely present, that touched her. She felt a spark of trust and warmth, a rare and dangerous feeling for someone who had been hurt before. Time slowed. For the first moments that evening, none of the other guests, the champagne, or the grand decorations mattered. There was only the small circle of 4 souls. Peter, Joy, and the twin girls, bound together by an unspoken recognition of loneliness, longing, and the possibility of love. Peter reached into his coat pocket, pulled out 2 small chocolate bars, and offered one to each child. They squealed softly and accepted, their delight spilling into the room like light from a cracked window. Joy laughed, a soft melodic sound, grateful that her children's innocent intervention had dissolved the tension between them. "Thank you." Peter signed to Joy, his movements careful, deliberate, yet imbued with gratitude. She nodded, returning the gesture, feeling the weight of the night's earlier anxieties lift. For the first time, Peter felt a sliver of hope. He was no longer just a rejected man at a Christmas blind date. He was part of something unexpectedly alive. He watched as the twins held hands with their mother, and then subtly, almost imperceptibly, glanced at him. A silent invitation to join their family's circle, if only for this evening. And in that moment, Peter realized, love didn't always announce itself with grand gestures or dazzling lights. Sometimes it arrived softly, carried by small hands, brave hearts, and the courage to reach across barriers that seemed insurmountable. Tonight, it had arrived at his door. Have children ever unexpectedly changed your life? Comment how a small act of courage brought joy to your world. The penthouse felt unusually quiet after the laughter of the twins had faded into the background. Peter sat back in his chair, watching Joy straighten the girls' coats, preparing them to leave. The warmth of the evening had been intoxicating, but a familiar unease crept back into his chest. He had felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: connection. And now that it was here, he wasn't sure he deserved it. He ran his fingers through his hair, the penthouse lights casting sharp shadows on his face. His mind replayed the events. The rejection earlier, the sudden joy of the girl's approach, the unexpected thrill of being noticed. It had all happened too fast. His instinct was to retreat. The thought of letting his walls down, even slightly, felt dangerous. Joy, too, was unsettled. She had laughed, relaxed, and allowed herself to enjoy the rare sight of Peter smiling with her children. But as she looked at him now, an unfamiliar tension flickered across his face. She could sense his hesitation, the invisible barrier he carried. Her heart ached with frustration. Why was it that the one man who seemed to understand her world, who had accepted her children so effortlessly, suddenly felt so distant? The twins, sensing the shift, clung a little closer to their mother, their small hands gripping her coat. They didn't understand the complex emotions at play, but they felt the unease. The penthouse, which had been filled with warmth, now felt colder, silent in ways that made every glance and gesture heavy with meaning. Peter stood abruptly, a carefully controlled calm masking the turmoil inside. I think this is a good place to stop for tonight," he signed, voice low but firm. Joy nodded, though her chest tightened. She had wanted to ask him to stay longer, to continue the moment that had felt almost magical, but something about his posture, the way his shoulders stiffened, told her he wasn't ready. They stepped outside into the winter night. Snow had begun to fall heavier, covering the streets in a thick, muffled blanket. Peter walked ahead, his hands deep in his pockets, eyes fixed on the ground. Joy followed, her daughters between them, trying to maintain cheerful chatter to ease the tension. But every word felt strained, hollow, unable to bridge the emotional distance that had suddenly grown. Peter's mind raced. He thought about how easily the twins had drawn him in, how their innocence had cracked the armor he had spent decades building. But he feared the consequences of opening himself up. What if he got attached? What if he allowed himself to care, only to be rejected again, more painfully than before? He clenched his fists, the crisp air biting at his skin, a silent reminder that vulnerability had a cost. Joy struggled with her own resistance. She had longed for a man who could accept her children, who could see past her struggles and appreciate her heart. Peter had seemed to be that man. Yet now, as he walked ahead, she felt a familiar sting of doubt. Perhaps it had been a fleeting moment, a Christmas illusion. Perhaps he was like all the others, brilliant, kind in brief bursts, but ultimately unavailable. The twins, unaware of the emotional complexity, began to chatter about Christmas trees and ornaments, their excitement breaking the tension in small, fragmented ways. Peter glanced at them, a pang of longing surfacing. They were fearless, unburdened by the walls he and Joy carried. Their trust and innocence reminded him of what he had lost in years of isolation. At a quiet corner of the street, Joy paused, turning to face Peter. She tried to catch his eyes, but he looked past her, distracted. "Peter, are you okay?" she asked softly, her breath forming small clouds in the cold night air. He gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head, not meeting her gaze. "I'm fine," he signed quickly, a defense mechanism more than a reassurance. But even as he said it, his chest tightened. He wanted to reach out, to close the gap, but pride and fear held him back. Joy's heart sank, realizing the wall he had erected was not just physical, but emotional. The walk back to her apartment was quiet, filled with the weight of unspoken thoughts. Peter felt the pull of the connection he had experienced, but resisted it with every fiber of his being. Joy, meanwhile, wrestled with a mix of hope and frustration, questioning whether she should wait for him to open up or let the night end without confrontation. When they finally reached her door, the twins tugged at Peter's coat, smiling brightly. "Bye," they signed enthusiastically, oblivious to the tension. Peter knelt down, signing back a gentle farewell, a hint of warmth threading through the restraint. Joy watched him, noting the brief softness in his eyes, even as his body language remained guarded. As the door closed behind them, Peter stood alone in the falling snow, wrestling with his emotions. The connection had been real, undeniable, yet he feared what it might cost him. He had glimpsed hope, and that made the possibility of loss even sharper. Joy leaned against her door, her daughters asleep, replaying every moment of the evening. She had felt warmth, laughter, and the strange thrill of seeing Peter truly engaged with her children. But now the resistance, the pulling away, haunted her. The magic had been fleeting, and she feared she might never see it again. Have you ever pulled away from someone you cared about out of fear? Share your story in the comments. The morning after the Christmas evening, a heavy snowstorm had blanketed the city. Streets were clogged, traffic stalled, and public transport was nearly paralyzed. Peter had intended to return to his penthouse, retreating into the solitude of his world. But when he checked his phone, he noticed multiple messages from Joy. "The girls are sick. I can't get out. Can you help?" Peter hesitated. His pride whispered that this was an inconvenience, a responsibility he didn't need. But something deeper stirred, a pull he could no longer ignore. Without thinking, he bundled up and stepped into the storm, the cold biting at his face, the wind whipping against his coat. He felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. The anticipation of seeing Joy and her daughters cutting through the fear of vulnerability. By the time he arrived, snow had piled high, turning the streets into a near whiteout. Joy opened the door, looking both relieved and embarrassed. Her daughters clung to her skirts, shivering and coughing. Peter knelt to help them inside, carrying blankets and a bag of groceries he had picked up on the way. His hands brushed against Joy's as she took one of the blankets. And for a moment, neither of them moved. An unspoken acknowledgement of the closeness forced upon them. The apartment, usually quiet except for the soft hum of the heater, now felt alive with movement. The twins played under Peter's watchful eyes, giggling even amidst sniffles and coughs, their warmth filling the space. Joy prepared hot cocoa, and the rich smell of chocolate and cinnamon mingled with the scent of winter snow that clung to their coats. Peter observed her as she moved, small, precise gestures that revealed strength and vulnerability intertwined. He realized how little he truly knew of people like her. Mothers who carried the world in their hearts while juggling chaos with grace. His respect deepened, and with it, a strange tenderness. The twins, sensing his attention, climbed onto the couch and demanded stories. Peter hesitated, then began to sign animatedly, telling a makeshift tale about a mischievous snowman. The children's laughter echoed through the apartment, melting the remaining walls he had erected. Joy watched, captivated by the rare softness in Peter. How he became entirely present, entirely human, entirely accessible when it came to her children. Hours passed unnoticed. The storm raged outside, trapping them together in this small, intimate world. Peter and Joy found themselves sitting across from one another on the couch, the children eventually dozing off under thick blankets. There was a silence now, not heavy, but pregnant with potential. Neither of them moved to break it immediately, both aware that the enforced proximity demanded honesty. Joy finally spoke, her voice low and deliberate. "Peter, I don't know why you came. You didn't have to." Her words carried both gratitude and caution, a reflection of the vulnerability she felt. Peter signed slowly, carefully choosing each movement. I wanted to. Because I care. His eyes met hers, and in that instant, the barriers began to crack. No words, no speeches, just the raw honesty conveyed through gesture, expression, and presence. Joy's throat tightened. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, feeling an emotional swell she hadn't allowed herself in years. She wanted to speak, to reach out, but the storm outside mirrored the storm inside, the uncertainty, the fear, the desire. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on his arm, a silent confirmation that proximity had shifted into connection. Peter's gaze lingered on her hand. Then the warmth of her touch traveled to his chest. For the first time that day, he felt a sense of belonging, not as a wealthy, isolated man, but as someone part of a fragile, unexpected family unit. The twins stirred slightly, smiling in their sleep as if aware that something had changed. The hours passed in quiet companionship. Joy and Peter shared small gestures, handing each other blankets, refilling cocoa mugs, laughing at the children's silly antics. There was no need to rush declarations of love. The enforced closeness had already built trust, familiarity, and a fragile intimacy that neither could deny. By the time the storm subsided, the bond forged in those hours felt unbreakable. They had been forced together, yes, but in that closeness, barriers fell, and the heart's hidden truths began to surface. Peter realized that some connections couldn't be ignored or resisted. They demanded attention, patience, and courage. Joy understood that even the most cautious heart could be swayed when confronted with genuine kindness, sincerity, and the warmth of unexpected companionship. Have you ever been forced into a moment that changed your relationship? Comment how unexpected closeness created connection in your life. The apartment was quiet after the twins had finally fallen asleep, their small breaths rhythmic and steady under heavy blankets. Joy sank onto the couch, her shoulders heavy, and Peter hesitated before sitting opposite her. The enforced proximity of the previous day had softened their defenses, but now, with the children asleep, the raw truths of their lives pressed forward. Peter broke the silence first, though slowly, cautiously. He gestured toward the children, a faint smile brushing his lips. I didn't expect to connect like this. His fingers trembled slightly as he signed, a subtle reveal of his vulnerability. Joy studied him quietly, sensing the fragility beneath the confident exterior he normally projected to the world. Peter, you don't have to hide it, she said softly. I can see more than you think. He sighed long and measured, the sound filling the small room in place of words he could not speak. His eyes drifted to the window, tracing the frost patterns on the glass. I lost my sister. We were close. And she died in a car accident. I was helpless. Each signed word came slowly, deliberate, heavy with unspoken grief. I've built walls. Walls to keep everyone safe from the pain I can't fix. Joy felt a lump rise in her throat. The story revealed more than tragedy. It revealed a man who had loved deeply, who had been shattered, and who now carried the weight of loss in every silent movement. She reached out, brushing a hand across his, tentative but reassuring. Peter, I understand. I've had my own loss. She hesitated, then continued, each word measured, her own vulnerability spilling into the quiet room. My husband, my ex, he left us. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. I've had to raise these girls alone, every day. It's lonely. And sometimes, it feels like I'll never find someone who sees us, really sees us. Peter's eyes softened, a tenderness that had been buried under wealth, power, and pride surfacing at last. He signed gently. We are not so different. Pain shapes us, but it can't stop what we feel now. His words trembled with sincerity, with the courage it took to reach across emotional walls. Joy swallowed hard, the weight of her own guarded heart shifting. She realized that in Peter's story, she saw echoes of her own, loss, fear, and longing intertwined with courage, hope, and the desire for connection. They were mirrors of each other in ways that words alone could never capture. The twins stirred, half awake, pulling the blankets closer. One whispered sleepily, Peter, tell the snowman story again. The sound, innocent and unburdened, acted as a bridge, connecting past wounds to present hope. Peter smiled, his expression soft and open, the grief and pride momentarily tempered by the warmth of this fragile family unit. He began to sign a gentle, improvised story, a mixture of humor and imagination. Watching the girl's eyes light up as the tale unfolded, Joy watched, her chest tight, recognizing a rare moment of healing. The way Peter's sorrow didn't define him, but allowed him to connect authentically. As the story ended, Peter looked at Joy. There was no need for words. The silent understanding between them conveyed everything. The pain, the resilience, and the fragile hope for something greater than either had dared to imagine. "We can be," he signed slowly, letting the words hang in the air. Joy nodded, tears prickling her eyes. "Yes, we can try. Together." For the first time in years, both felt a weight lift, a burden shared, no longer carried alone. The shared vulnerabilities transformed their connection from tentative attraction into profound emotional intimacy. It wasn't just the magic of Christmas or the innocence of the twins. It was recognition, empathy, and the courage to let someone see the parts of themselves they had hidden for so long. The storm outside had long subsided, but inside, a different kind of warmth had taken root. The apartment, once a place of survival and solitude, now held the beginnings of healing and hope. Both Peter and Joy understood that the past would always be a part of them, but it didn't have to dictate the future. Have you ever shared a painful story that changed your relationship? Comment how vulnerability opened a connection in your life. The apartment was bathed in the soft glow of fairy lights, reflecting off the snow outside and painting the room in warm, golden hues. Peter and Joy sat across from each other at the small dining table, the twins having fallen asleep after another round of stories. A quiet peace settled over the space, the kind that felt fragile yet comforting. Peter reached across the table, hesitating before sliding a small, neatly wrapped box toward Joy. "For you and them," he signed, a rare smile tugging at his lips. Joy's eyes widened, touched by the thoughtfulness behind the simple gesture. She opened the box to find handmade ornaments, each painted with care, tiny stars and snowmen meant for her daughter's tree. Her fingers brushed against his as she accepted the gift. "Peter, these are beautiful," she whispered, though he couldn't hear. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, words weren't needed. The warmth of their exchange said everything. They spent the next hour decorating the tree, Peter awkwardly but earnestly placing ornaments, the twins chiming in with excited suggestions. Joy laughed genuinely at his hesitations and exaggerated care. For Peter, it was a rare moment of unguarded joy, of freedom from the precision and control his life usually demanded. He realized how much he had missed such simple, intimate connections, how much he had missed life itself. Between decorating, they shared stories, some humorous, some bittersweet. Joy recounted childhood memories, Christmas mornings with her family, and small adventures with her daughters. Peter shared childhood tales, his signing punctuated with subtle humor, making Joy laugh until her sides ached. It was a delicate dance of vulnerability and levity, each moment pulling them closer without overt pressure or expectation. At one point, Joy paused, watching Peter as he carefully hung a tiny ornament on the lowest branch so the twins could see. "You really care about them," she said softly, almost to herself. Peter nodded, his expression tender. "They remind me of what matters," he signed. The honesty in his eyes resonated deeply with her. As the evening continued, the small apartment filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet comfort of shared presence. Peter noticed the way Joy's eyes sparkled in the glow of the fairy lights, and how her laughter carried a resilience he hadn't expected. Joy saw in Peter a man capable of tenderness, of humor, of care, far beyond the distant, untouchable image of a billionaire she had imagined. In a rare moment of quiet, they both leaned back, watching the twins nap beneath the tree, their small faces peaceful and serene. Peter signed slowly. "I never thought I could feel like this with someone outside of family." Joy reached across, placing her hand over his, a bridge over years of solitude and pain. She smiled softly, whispering, "Neither did I." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, heavy with understanding, trust, and an unspoken promise. They weren't declaring love yet, but they were planting the seeds of a bond that felt real, fragile, and enduring. Even in the quiet moments, subtle touches, shared laughter, and attentive gestures carried profound emotional weight. The twins stirred, murmuring sleepily, and Peter instinctively tucked the blanket around them, careful, protective. Joy watched, realizing that his heart had room for them, for her, for something more than he had ever allowed himself to believe possible. The night ended with Peter walking Joy to the door, the snow falling lightly outside, glinting under the streetlights. Neither spoke much. Words felt unnecessary. His fingers lingered on hers for a brief second, longer than politeness required. A silent acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Joy's gaze met his, a mixture of gratitude and cautious hope. "Thank you for today," she whispered. He signed in response. "No, thank you for letting me in." As the door closed behind her, Peter lingered for a moment, feeling the weight of a connection that had been building quietly but powerfully. He realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. He wasn't just the billionaire, the isolated man. He was part of something tender, something fragile, and something real. Have you ever bonded with someone unexpectedly? Comment a moment when laughter or small gestures built trust in your life. The morning sun filtered through the frosted windows, painting the apartment in soft light. Peter had spent the night replaying every small gesture from the previous evening. The laughter, the stories, the gentle touches. He had allowed himself to hope, perhaps more than he should have, but he couldn't ignore the bond that had grown between him, Joy, and the twins. Joy, meanwhile, had prepared breakfast, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for the girls. But unease lingered in her chest. A sudden message on her phone shattered the calm. An email from her ex, reminding her of overdue bills and legal obligations regarding the children. Panic surged through her. She felt trapped between past responsibilities and the fragile new connection with Peter. Peter arrived at her apartment later than usual, hoping to continue building the bond, unaware of the emotional storm brewing inside. He knocked softly, a tentative smile on his lips, ready for warmth and shared laughter. Joy opened the door, her expression tense, eyes filled with worry. "Peter, I can't. Not today," she whispered, stepping aside. Peter's brow furrowed, sensing the distance. "Why?" he signed, concern and confusion flashing across his face. Joy hesitated, torn between honesty and protecting him from her chaos. "It's complicated. My issues with the twins. I can't. I'm sorry." She stepped back, closing the door gently, leaving Peter standing in the hallway, the cold winter air biting at his cheeks. Shock and disbelief hit him like a physical blow. He had let himself hope, believed in the possibility of something real, and now it seemed to crumble in an instant. His hands clenched into fists, and for the first time, tears threatened his eyes, tears of frustration, fear, and heartbreak. He turned away, walking back through the snow-laden streets, replaying the scene over and over. Did she ever feel the same? Was it all an illusion? His chest tightened, the emotional weight almost suffocating. The warmth of yesterday felt distant, replaced by the cold isolation he had fought so hard to escape. Inside, Joy sat with the twins, their little hands in hers, and felt the weight of her own choices pressing down. She wanted to explain, to bridge the gap, but fear of rejection, fear of misunderstanding, and lingering mistrust of her own heart held her back. She hadn't intended to push Peter away, but circumstances had forced her hand, and the resulting distance felt unbearable. Peter returned to his penthouse, slamming the door behind him. The opulence, the grandeur, the city's sparkling skyline. All of it felt hollow without the connection he had glimpsed with Joy. He had glimpsed a life beyond isolation, yet now it seemed just out of reach. Anger, sorrow, and longing swirled inside him, threatening to undo the emotional progress he had fought so hard to achieve. He poured himself a glass of untouched champagne, staring out at the city lights, and realized that the walls he had built were both protection and prison. In trying to guard himself from loss, he had risked pushing away something extraordinary. The thought of losing Joy, losing the possibility of love at last, was unbearable. Meanwhile, Joy tried to comfort the twins, but their questions pierced her heart. "Why won't Peter come over?" one asked, tears glistening in her eyes. Joy hugged them tightly, her own tears falling silently. "I don't know, my loves. Sometimes adults have to figure things out." But inside, she knew the truth. Her fear and pride had created distance where there could have been connection. The day stretched on, heavy and silent. Peter, usually so controlled and decisive, felt helpless. Joy, usually so resourceful, felt trapped in uncertainty. The very bond that had begun to heal their loneliness now threatened to shatter under the weight of misunderstandings, pride, and external pressures. As evening fell, Peter sat by his window, the city lights twinkling mockingly below. He thought of Joy's smile, the warmth in her eyes, the laughter of the twins echoing in his mind. And despite the hurt, he realized one thing. He couldn't let fear and pride dictate his heart forever. But tonight, for now, the distance remained, heavy and painful, a shatter point that left both wondering if the fragile bond could survive. Have you ever had a misunderstanding that almost ruined a connection? Share how you rebuilt it in the comments. The city was quiet that evening, snow still clinging to rooftops and streetlights, reflecting a pale glow across empty streets. Peter sat in his penthouse, staring at the twinkling lights, replaying the events of the last days. Joy's hesitation, the twins' laughter, the warmth he had glimpsed, all of it tugged at something he had long believed dead inside. For years, he had relied on control, isolation, and walls to protect himself from pain. But the more he thought of Joy, the more he realized that the life he had constructed, flawless and unyielding, had left him hollow. She and her daughters had shown him a vulnerability he hadn't allowed himself to feel in decades. And now, after the shatter point, he faced a decision: retreat into loneliness, or risk everything for the fragile hope of love. Across the city, Joy sat by her window, the twins asleep at her side. She watched the snowfall, each flake a reminder of how fleeting moments of happiness could be. The memory of Peter's hands brushing hers, the way he had engaged with her children, and the rare honesty in his eyes pressed on her heart. She knew she could continue to guard herself, let fear dictate her choices. But the thought of losing what they had almost found was unbearable. Peter rose from his chair, pacing the penthouse floor. He picked up his phone, staring at the blank screen as if searching for the courage to act. He could wait. She could come back to him. Or he could go to her. Each option carried risk, but inaction had already cost him too much. He remembered the twins' innocent eyes, Joy's quiet strength, and the laughter they had shared. That memory became a guiding light, piercing through the fog of fear. Joy, meanwhile, felt her heart pounding. The emotional walls she had built over years of disappointment trembled under the weight of desire and hope. She could ignore the feelings, protect herself from potential heartbreak, or she could trust Peter, trust the bond they had started to form. For the first time in a long while, she realized that avoidance was more dangerous than vulnerability. Peter left his penthouse, the snow crunching beneath his boots, heart racing. Each step toward Joy's apartment was heavy with anticipation and fear. He rehearsed his words, his signs, the way he would bridge the distance that had opened between them. This is it, he thought. The moment to choose life, love, and connection over solitude. Joy, hearing a faint knock at her door, froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Could it really be him? She hesitated, caught between fear and hope. Finally, she stepped forward, opening the door to find Peter standing there, snow-dusted but resolute, eyes filled with sincerity and longing. He smiled gently, signing slowly. "I can't lose this. Not you, not them, not us." Tears welled in Joy's eyes. Her heart ached, but this time with anticipation rather than fear. She nodded, voice trembling as she whispered, "Neither can I." The unspoken barriers between them began to dissolve, replaced by a mutual willingness to risk everything for the fragile, extraordinary bond they shared. Peter stepped inside, careful not to break the delicate space that had formed. The twins stirred, half awake, sensing the shift in the air. Peter knelt, signing softly, "I am here. Always." The girls giggled, sensing the warmth and safety in his presence. Joy watched, overcome with gratitude and relief. For the first time in years, Peter felt whole. Not because of wealth, power, or control, but because he had chosen vulnerability, chosen to embrace love despite fear. Joy felt the same. The courage to trust, to connect, to open her heart, had transformed uncertainty into possibility. They spent the evening together, talking, laughing, and sharing quiet moments by the fire. The past wounds had not vanished, but they no longer dictated the present. Instead, Peter and Joy allowed the bond forged through challenge, fear, and tenderness to flourish. By nightfall, as the city slept under a blanket of snow, they sat together with the twins asleep nearby, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. The choice had been made: to face vulnerability, to embrace love, and to take the leap into a life that promised connection, healing, and joy. Have you ever had to choose vulnerability over fear? Comment how taking that risk changed your life. The morning sunlight streamed through the living room windows, casting warm, golden rays across the apartment. The snow outside had melted into slush, but inside, a sense of renewal filled the space. Peter sat at the small dining table, the twins perched on either side, helping him arrange tiny presents into a neat pile for the day's Christmas celebration. Joy entered with a smile that lit up the room, her eyes reflecting gratitude and the quiet triumph of hope. She paused for a moment, taking in the scene. Peter laughing as one twin accidentally dropped a ribbon, the other twins giggling uncontrollably, and the apartment alive with warmth and life. The walls that had once guarded their hearts were gone, or at least softened. Peter looked up, noticing Joy standing at the doorway. He signed softly, "Merry Christmas, Joy." Joy laughed softly, moving to sit beside him. "Merry Christmas, Peter," she said, her voice full of emotion. "And thank you for everything." She reached for his hand, fingers intertwining naturally with his. No hesitation this time, no fear. The twins leaned in, their small hands reaching for both Peter and Joy. "We're a team now," one exclaimed, giggling. The other nodded vigorously, eyes shining. The sentiment wasn't just childish exuberance. It was a simple truth. They had all become a family, forged through laughter, struggle, and shared vulnerability. Peter smiled, a full, unguarded smile that seemed to radiate warmth. For years, he had lived behind walls of silence and control, but now with Joy and the twins, he understood that love didn't require perfection. Only presence, courage, and openness. He signed slowly, deliberately, "I love you all." Joy's eyes glistened with tears of happiness, and she hugged him gently. "And we love you, Peter," she whispered. It was a simple declaration, but it carried the weight of their journey. The struggles, the fears, the shatterpoints, and the ultimate choice to embrace love. The day continued with quiet joy. They decorated the remaining parts of the apartment, wrapped the small gifts, and played games by the fire. Each moment was layered with laughter, warmth, and intimacy. There was no need for grand declarations or dramatic gestures. The love between them was quiet, enduring, and profoundly real. As evening approached, Peter and Joy stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The twins sat nearby, tired but content, their small hands holding ornaments they had created together. The scene mirrored the moment from Act 2, the central spark, but now it was transformed. What had begun as chance, innocence, and courage had become deliberate, chosen love. Peter signed, his fingers moving with certainty. "This is home." Joy leaned her head on his shoulder. "Yes, home," she whispered, feeling the depth of connection and belonging. The twins hugged both of them, laughter spilling over. Peter ruffled their hair, careful and tender, and Joy watched, heart swelling. It was a perfect moment. Not perfect in a storybook sense, but perfect in the real, messy, and beautiful way that love often is. Later, as the evening settled into calm, Peter and Joy shared a quiet conversation. They reflected on the journey that had brought them together. The rejected blind date, the courage of two little girls, the vulnerability they had faced, and the walls they had dismantled. Each memory carried resonance, echoing like a soft refrain through their hearts. Peter smiled, signing slowly, "Love sometimes unexpected but worth everything." Joy nodded, pressing a gentle kiss to his hand. "Yes, Peter. Worth everything." The camera of imagination lingers on the four of them. Peter, Joy, and the twins, sitting together by the fire, the apartment warm with love, the city outside indifferent but alive, as a soft snow falls again. The story of fear, hesitation, and resistance has given way to connection, trust, and the magic of love at last. And in the echoes of Act 2, the simple question remains, but now with profound resonance. Can we join you? This time, it is answered not with hesitation, but with wholehearted inclusion, belonging, and joy. Have you ever experienced love when you least expected it? Comment your story of unexpected connection and joy. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. Your time, your support, and your presence here mean more than words can say. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or kept you watching, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep believing in love. See you in the next story.